As a tank, one of the best belt items you can have in your arsenal is this empowered Chain of Scales. Much like the Forger's box for your DPS and healers, this one will straight up give you a reliable boost in your defensive stats of 3% awareness, and then yes, it is random. Again, like the Forger's box, what you'd obtain as the secondary effect. But just that 3% awareness alone makes this belt item one of the best, and in my opinion, all tanks should at least have it in their arsenal as an option to use on their belt items. Personally, I always just run with it. So I've been working on my fighter tank, and we've got the Chain of Scales here, along with all the scales necessary to upgrade it. So let's go through each of the steps in depth of exactly how you can obtain firstly this Chain of Scales, and then all the scales necessary to refine this thing all the way to Mythic, so it can give you the maximum bonus. There'll be timestamps in the play bar below, so feel free to skip to any part you're most interested in. And there'll also be helpful links with regards specifically to your Chultan hunts, which you're going to have to fully work through in order to get this thing to Mythic. So before we get started, I'd like to give a massive thank you to all of these channel members for the added support. The very first step will be to make sure you go to your campaigns and you go to your Jungles of Chult. You're going to have to complete the very first part just down here, all through your Shoshan Star River, completing the storyline, and then you're going to have to go to your Lost City of Omu and complete the storyline here. You're going to have to complete each of these steps all the way to the very last one. Now, if, like me, you've gone and let's say completed this campaign on a different character, well, you can simply use genie gifts and skip to the second top part here and just complete each of these steps. You'll complete the storyline, and what you'll need to do is get as far as the Sioux Monster quest, where you're placing down all of these puzzle cubes that you've gathered throughout the Lost City of Omu. Once you've completed that quest, you need to return back to Iku, handing in that Sioux Monster quest, and then going to your campaign and actually completing this final part, the Fane of the Night Serpent. Once that progress bar is finished and you collected your reward, Iku will now give you the quest, the Fane of the Night Serpent. We accept that quest and we head back to these ruins here at the Royal Palace and enter our portal into the Fane of the Night Serpent. Kind of like a mini dungeon. You can go in with friends, but we really have no problem here solo. You'll make your way along, killing some Yuan Ti, and then come to this trap room. You'll see the floor will then fall away once you get to this middle section. And here you need to find a key. You can see it requires a key. And you want to just search around the edge of the rooms here. And we finally find the key just here tucked in the corner. And you run back out of that poison and you interact with this thing. And that brings the floor back up. And then you interact here again to bring up the next section of floor. And then you're just going to have to kill those two UNT that are guarding the doorway. And heading through will bring you to this boss room. This is mini boss. You're going to have to kill him, no skipping him. And once we do kill him, we get our very first scale, the Resilient Abomination scale. So make sure to get that one. Then you'll just simply proceed onwards further, killing through some enemies until you face the final boss here. You'll have a few mechanics to get through, but once you go and finish her off, you'll get your story cutscene, which you can of course just skip. But with that, she should drop you the Chain of Scales, which you can simply pick up off the ground from that boss you've just killed. There we have it, the green Chain of Scales. So just by completing the Fane of the Night Serpent, you should have the Chain of Scales and the Resilient Abomination scale, which will allow you to refine your Chain of Scales up to the Chain of 2 scales. So just simply clicking upgrade on that. Then we're going to have to get the next scale, which is the Kutlass Bloody scale. Now this will require you in the campaign, Jungles of Chult, to have unlocked your monster hunts here. In Omu, you only have to get to the rare creatures part, this section, as what you will need to be crafting is these Horn of the Apes. to fight the Kutlass boss. So what you will need to do is you'll need to kill these Mind Whisperers and these Brazier Tyrannosaurus Rexes for the spines, and then also the chipped Chris, which will give you the Horn of the Ape. And you can see you can get the Kutlass Bloody Scale by killing that Kutlass Hunt mob. And many thanks to these guys for creating this. It's very nice and detailed. And you will find the UNT Mind Whisperers in the under level just here on your map. You can see the locations where they spawn just there. And on the over map, you shall see a bunch of that spawns just here as well. Just make sure to go and kill your normal group of enemies in order for your hunt mobs to actually spawn. And as for the T-Rexes, for the spines, you can see the 3 pathways that they walk on. You'll have to kill the normal ones in order for the elite ones to spawn to actually give you the drops. And so once you got your drops, you will craft your Horn of the Ape lure just in Port Nyanzaru at this NPC just here. And then you need to head over to Kutlass just here. Here you will place down the lure at the altar and the boss Kutlass will spawn. And here he will drop you your Kutlass Bloody Scale. It is a chance that it drops, and the way I got it, supposedly, was by putting all the scales I already had in my bank. And then the next try, I very well indeed went and got my Kutlass. Don't know if that's just coincidence or not, but if you're having trouble with that, put those scales in the bank and it might have a better chance of dropping for you. But that is now our Kutlass Bloody Scale, which can allow us to get the chain of scales to the chain of 3 scales on blue there. Upgrading it, there we have it. And to get to the next level, you will need to have the Tarnished Mind Whisperer scale. Now this scale you will get from the Merchant Prince's Folly skirmish. So we queue up to that with a random group, and you'll just run through the skirmish as normal, killing all the enemies. And at the very end, once we finally kill off the last enemies, we get then our completion and we get our rewards. And you can see we get the Tarnished Mind Whisperer scale just as a drop there. I don't know if it's 100% drop chance, so if you haven't got it before there and you don't get it on your first run, you might have to do multiple of these runs. So with that Tarnished Mind Whisperer scale, we can get our chain of scales up to the next rank there, simply upgrading it. Now we will need the Decayed scale of Ras Nisi. You guessed it, we're going to have to do Tomb of the 9 Gods. This is an advanced dungeon, so it can be a little bit more challenging, so make sure you got your character up to par, and hopefully you get a good group or you get some friends together. And I did this on my Bard Healer here to give the video footage to show the scale actually dropping. So we go and we finally complete the dungeon itself, and the way you get the scale here is by opening your chest. Within the rightmost chest you will get this envenomed cash. That's where the scale will drop. We just re-roll, you will always get your envenomed cash. And when we go to our inventory, inspect our loot, we go and open this envenomed cash, and that has a chance to give you the Decayed scale of Ras Nisi. Keep in mind it's a chance, so you might have to do this dungeon multiple times like I did to get this scale. So now we have that, we can upgrade our chain of scales to the chain of 5 scales to get it to purple. Then to get it to legendary, you will need the Bile Drenched scale. Now this one's going to be the one that probably takes you the most amount of time. You can see it's the last scale, but we will be able to get this thing to Mythic. So what you will need to do is actually complete all of the hunts here. You will have to get your campaign section, Monster Hunt, fully completed all the way up to unlocking the Tyrant. I have it on a different character, so I was able to do it there. No need to do it on like a second character. And what you need to do is follow through this entire Chult Hunt map. You're going to have to get a bunch of these lures to kill your Chichers, Red Fangs, Metas, etc. to then get the lure to go on to fight the tier 2 enemies and finally craft the drops from those to get the Tyrant. Very fortunately, the drop rates from the mini bosses is 100%. So as long as you craft a lure to kill your Chitters and then your Red Fang, you'll guaranteed get the actual drop from there to craft then your next one, and so on. And it's a tiered system, and you might want to look at other videos how this exactly works, but For me, this document or this picture here shows it pretty neatly, the pathway you need. And if you look through the other maps, for example, here's the underground one of the hunt boss locations where you have their altars. Here's where the different enemies spawn in order to actually get those trophies from those tier 1 guys. And above the ground you have this map again with those enemy locations. You're just killing the lesser types to make the hunt mobs spawn, and above ground here's then all the altars for the rest of those hunt bosses. But we go to this NPC and we go and we craft our rotten flesh, which is going to be the lure for the tyrant. We claim that there, and that's our tier 3 lure. Now what you need to do is go to the lost city of Omu, make sure you're on the character at which you want the scale on, and give that character the tier 3 hunt lure. And you go to your pedestal, which on the map is just up here for the tyrant, and we go to place down our lure, and out comes the tyrant. He's not exactly the most challenging boss anymore, and we can burn him down fairly quickly. I just went on my tank to be cautious in case this guy could deal some damage. But we kill him and we can see we get our Bile Drenched scale just there on the right. And that finishes your entire hunt system of Chult. You'll have to go through every single step to get that lure. Of course, you can just buy it off somebody. The drop rate should be 100% to get that. And with that last Bile Drenched scale, you can upgrade your chain of scales to legendary chain of 6 scales. Now you can see you will need a Soulmonger's Ampoule to get it finally to Mythic. And what content is missing that we haven't yet done from our Chult campaign? Well, you guessed it, it's the epic trial, Cradle of the Death God. Here again, I just go with a random group. I would highly recommend watching a mechanics video of this trial if you haven't stepped foot in it. It's got some pretty tricky mechanics, especially this push and pull one, to avoid getting thrown off the edge and dying. But you'll fight this big baby boss, fairly ugly. And once you go and finally defeat him, you'll finish the trial, and here you will get an ampule. You could see that in the bottom right there. Unfortunately, it's a little bit covered, but you can see you get an ampule, and in your inventory it will be in the section here just way down the bottom. We already have 3 of these Soulmonger Ampules. You can get 1 of them per week by doing the trial. Once you have that ampule, you can then finally upgrade it all the way to Mythic, and that's your maximum rank. Now keep in mind, this will not stack with the Forger's box, so if you've got the Forger's box, there's no real need to have them both slotted unless you want to be able to freely switch between loadouts. But if you use one of them, for example, we slot both of them here. We use the chain of scales. We can see in our buff bar we do obtain our Visage of Dender, which gives us also increased stamina regen. But if we go and use our Forger's box, we can see that when we check our buff bar, we do gain the Forger's power and speed, but we lose the Dender. So one will overwrite the other, so there's no point having both of them slotted. And that indeed is how you get your Mythic chain of scales fully upgraded in Neverwinter. It is quite a grind, but definitely recommended that all tanks would run through this at some point if you're serious about min-maxing your tank statistics, so you can maximize that survivability. Overall, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And again, I'd like to give a special thank you to all of these channel members for the continued support. And if I presented this well, consider leaving the video a like. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.